channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie, and this channel is where I share with you my works in progress, finished projects, things I'm cooking up, books I'm reading, funny things my kids may say. My hope is that as you watch this episode and the previous episodes that you find some inspiration along the way. It is the first week of August, year 2021, and this is episode 65. It has been about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks since we last visited here on YouTube. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. Whew, it has been a very hot summer. I am coming to you from the upper Midwest in the United States. And I feel like our summers, we're like 80s Fahrenheit is typical. And the evenings usually cool to like 50s, 60s. But I feel like this summer, 90s have been the typical temperature with like some heat index temperatures like well above 100. So we've had a lot of heat advisories. And even in the evenings with high humidity, it doesn't even feel that cool. So not loving that heat, but yeah, it's August, so we know fall is around the corner and then winter is coming. But yeah, our garden is blooming. We have some, the majority of our plants are planted in kind of a lower area that can get a little marshy and is naturally more wet. So we actually don't have to water very often. We have noticed that with the water levels being a lot lower this year, that area that is typically a little more wet isn't as wet. But everything still seems to be doing okay. We have zinnias blooming, and the zinnias I didn't realize would get so big. It's our first year with successful zinnias, and they're like 4 feet tall. It is amazing. We have one dahlia that just started blooming, and that was planted, I think, just this past spring. And the lilies are pretty much done. There's like a couple late bloomers here and there, just of different varieties. The hydrangeas are still going strong. We have the creamy white with a little bit of green variety. And what else is blooming? Snapdragons and phlox are both blooming really well. The phlox, I'm pretty sure it's phlox. But then when I like search Google Images for phlox, none of those varieties seem to look like ours. So I'm pretty sure what we have is phlox. I will have inserted some footage in the beginning of this episode that you will have already seen. And whatever I didn't insert there, I'll put up on the screen here so you can also see what I am talking about. And that's kind of a note throughout the episode as well. If you are working on other things or doing other things, there will be times when I show something on the screen of what I am talking about, be it a video or an image. Also, if I catch myself saying something incorrectly, I'll also make note with text on the screen. If I don't notice it, while I'm editing the video, I will have text in the description box below this video. Also in the description box below this video will be links to things that I talk about today. I usually organize it by like designers and makers in one section with website links, and then I have a separate part just for Ravelry project pages. And then all my videos, as usual, are fully captioned, but at the time of upload, they may not appear yet because it does take a few days for YouTube to upload their automatic captioning, and then I go in and edit that and publish it. So that should show up within a week of the video publishing. I have 4 finished projects to share with you today. 2 are garments and 2 are socks. And I do have a few works in progress to share with you today. I believe there's, let's see, 5 works in progress. I'm trying to think if any of them you saw last time. You may not have seen them last time. Not that they weren't cast on last time. Some of them probably weren't, but I think the majority of them are new cast-ons, but I think at least one of them was cast on, but I just didn't show it last time. So lots to talk about. Grab a beverage of choice, get your knitting, crocheting, whatever you enjoy doing while watching videos about baking, and let's dive right in. All right, so the first project I'd like to share with you is my Rocket Tee by Tennis of Tennis Fiber Arts. And this tee I started at the very end of June and I finished it at the end of July, and it is the one that I am wearing. I'll see if I can stand up here so you can see it a little bit better. So it is a V-neck, short sleeve, striped tee. I did make some modifications, so I'll talk about that. And the length goes well past my hip, so this is the top of my hip bone, so it goes maybe like about 4 inches maybe past that. So if you wanted it a cropped length, you definitely could do that as well. I knit the size 2 for a finished bust circumference of 35 inches, and that gives me 3 inches of positive ease. The gauge is 24 stitches by 32 rows in 4 inches of stockinette blocked, and the needle size recommended is US 5 or 3.75 millimeter needles. I did use the same needle size, I did get gauge, I did use different yarn. So in her pattern, she has you alternate like a fingering weight with a mohair lace weight, and I don't love knitting with mohair held on its own. I just feel like I can't feel the stitches, it's a little fussy. I definitely have to look because I can't feel where that strand is. What I did instead is I used Sweet Georgia Mohair Silk Sock. It is 50% superwash merino, 15% silk, 15% mohair, and 20% nylon. It comes at 437 yards for 100 grams, and it is has a little shimmer to it, a beautiful drape. It was really nice to work with. It was like a round yarn. I guess they're all kind of round, but not really. I guess I've worked with some that are like kind of flatter, or some feel stringier. This one was just really nice, like, I don't know, nice and round. A good ply, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it, but I enjoyed knitting with it. It wasn't splitty or stiff or any of that. The colors I used were Lady Gray, which is this silvery lavender color, and then Birch was this kind of silvery taupe color. And yeah, I really enjoyed how the colors worked out. I'll put some pictures that I took once I finished it up on the screen here, so you can take a peek at that. I omitted the eyelets. So in the raglan shaping, there's eyelets around your shoulder, and there's also eyelets down the side seams. I decided eyelets were going to be too fussy for me. Now eyelets on themselves, like they're not hard to do. They're just yarn overs, but I feel like when they're used for like purposes of increasing and needing a stitch marker there, they can jump that stitch marker, and that is super annoying to me because I will always be second guessing myself if I have the right number of stitches there, if that yarn over is supposed to be on the right side or the left side, and it was just gonna be too fussy. So I omitted the eyelets, and I did make one right, make one left for my increases, and then I just omitted the eyelets on the side seams and just knit stockinette in the round. That made it much more enjoyable for me because, I mean, if I'm going to make it, I want to enjoy the process. Nothing wrong with the eyelets, it's just personal preference. So that's what I did. I ended up using 82 grams of the lavender and 78 grams of the birch, and my total project ended up I think about 700 yards. And another thing that I did was I picked up less stitches for the V-neck I-cord edging. I did it per pattern initially, and I felt like it was just way too low for my comfort level, and just the back was kind of flipping because it was so loose. And so I took it out and I redid the I-cord edging, and I also used a smaller needle. So I picked up less stitches and used a smaller needle. So the whole body is knit on US 5s, and for the neckline I did, I think, a US 2.5, which right now I can't remember what millimeter size needle that is, but I used a US 2.5. And then for the sleeves, I also picked up using using a smaller needle size, but I didn't use US 2.5. I used a US 4 for whatever reason. I probably could have gone just a little bit smaller too. It doesn't flare, but it does kind of jump out a little bit. I guess that's flaring. Just a little bit. It doesn't really bother me that much, but I think if I wanted it to maybe stay in a little bit more, I could have used the US 2.5. So those were my main modifications. Oh, and then my body length, I shortened it by 1 inch. I think for all sizes, she has you knit to the same length because the raglan shaping will also increase the length of your tee, and then everybody knits the same body length. Yeah, I enjoyed this knit. It's very comfortable. Granted, I don't like wearing like woolly, definitely not mohair knits when it's like 90 degrees out, but in cooler weather, it's great. And I love it as a layering piece. It's going to be so nice under a cardigan. And it's been nice this morning. I think this morning it was maybe in the 60s. So it's kind of like the perfect thing to keep like the core of my body warmer, but still keep my arms free because washing dishes and, you know, things like that. So I recommend this. It was really fun. I can definitely see why people make multiple versions of this tee. Oh, and you don't have to do stripes either. She gives you a recommended number of rounds to knit per stripe, but the instructions don't actually tell you when to switch colors. So you could easily just make the whole thing on one color, you could fade it, you could knit every stripe a different color, make it like a scrappy project where you use leftovers for each stripe. Something I did do was measure or like weigh my yarn before and after doing a stripe, just so I kind of knew about how many grams it took me per stripe, and that was nice just to kind of just know how far my yardage would go. I knew I wasn't going to run out of yarn because I was starting with 2 full skeins, but if I ever wanted to make this again and use like minis or something like that, I just wanted to have an idea of how much each stripe took up. So tip for you if you decide to do something similar. All right, the next finished project is the Darren tee, and I started that about mid-June and finished it about mid-July maybe. It is from the Embody collection by Jacqueline Cieslak, and I did make a few changes as well. Not like huge changes because the pattern is written for you to customize it to fit your body. And what's kind of cool about this one is that she gives you basically like a worksheet or workbook. I mean, this whole thing is kind of like a workbook, like fill in the blank. And so she'll say, if you're knitting this size, fill in these numbers for spots A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or whatever. And that's how many rows or rounds you knit, or how many inches, or things like that. So it does take a bit of thinking, but I do feel like it gives you an understanding of body dimensions, I guess, and garment construction. So it is a top-down tee, but not as straightforward. Doesn't seem to be the right word, but I'm going to use straightforward because I can't think of another word right now. Not as straightforward as like a circular yoke top down. Like that, I feel like that construction is very much like A, B, C, D. Like I get the steps well, and maybe it's also because I've knit several circular yoke top down sweaters, but this one is top down, but there's so much shaping to it, which is also incredible because it can give you a really good fit. But I mean, I don't find circular yokes ill-fitting on me either. So anyway, it was a great learning opportunity on shaping. So here is mine. I will insert photos that I took of me wearing this so you can see it on a body, and those will be up on the screen. I knit size 2 for a finished circumference of 35.25 inches, also giving about 3 inches of positive ease, or 3¼ inches of positive ease, similar to the one that I'm wearing now. Gauge 24 stitches by 32 rounds is 4 inches of stockinette blocked, which I think, yeah, that's the exact same gauge as the rocket tee that I'm wearing, but using different weight of yarn. So the needle size recommended is also US 5, 3.75 millimeter, and then you go down 1 needle size for the ribbing. This one recommends you use sport weight yarn, and I used Malabrigo Sucero, which is 325 yards for 100 grams. It's 25% linen, 25% merino wool, and 50% mulberry silk. It has a beautiful drape to it. The colors I used were Sunset for this golden orange, and Frank Ochre for this beautiful gold. And I had one skein of each. So looking at the yardage in the pattern for this size, I knew I was going to end up with a cropped, like between a cropped and a full length, just based on the yardage I had. And I only had one skein of each color. So initially I thought, oh, maybe I'll stripe it. And that's how I knit my gauge swatch, my fabric swatch. I'll show you that right now. So I knit some stripes of different widths just to kind of see how it would knit up. And while I'm showing you my swatch, I guess I'll tell you kind of how I do my swatches. I do these yarn overs with knit two togethers in the middle to indicate the needle size that I use. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, indicating I used a US 5. I do cast on extra stitches so that I have ribbing on the edges so it doesn't roll up. And I mean, even if it says to knit it in the round for a swatch, I always knit mine flat, because I'm often playing yarn chicken, and if I knit it in the round and cut up the back, then I can't reuse that yarn. But if I knit it flat, then I can unravel it if I need to reuse this yarn. And also, my gauge knit flat versus in the round is the same. It isn't true for everybody. A lot of people with purling, they're looser, but mine's the same. And also, I feel like for a lot of garments that are not, or that, like for bottom-up sweaters, for example, you might knit in the round from the bottom up to the armpits, but once you separate for sleeves, you're knitting flat. So your gauge is going to be different, right, on the top, but I don't see those patterns telling you to do a gauge swatch flat and in a round so that you can adjust your needle size depending on which section you're knitting on, right? Like, I don't think I've seen a pattern do that. Anyway, so I always knit mine flat. And I did get gauge. And then I usually put a little piece of paper tag on attached to my swatch. And on there I write some pertinent information. And then I have a drawer in my desk that holds a ton of swatches. And it's good reference, because if I have a future project that I'm like, oh, I wonder if that yarn would look good, it gives me a starting point. Like, yes, my gauge can change over time. Like, I could be a tighter knitter now than I am 5 years from now, and I'm looking at my swatch saying, that doesn't make sense. But it gives me a starting point, and then I know how the fabric knits up, and I can feel it, and anyway, I like it. So, I didn't end up striping. I color blocked, because by the time I finished the top and I knew I wanted my sleeves to be the same color as I started, I didn't have much yarn left. So I also wanted my I-cord edging to be the same color. I didn't want to swap it out for yellow. I just felt like it would look neater, especially if my pickups weren't as neat and tidy. Then it hides it a little bit more in the orange than it would if it was like a different color. So I didn't really want that. And I did really well. I totally won at Yarn Chicken. Do you want to see how much of the orange I have left? I have half a gram left of the orange yarn. I totally won. Do you want to see how much yellow I have left? Also not very much. I have 5 grams left. So I think I did pretty awesome. I used up 615 yards total, and I did shorten some things. So for the sleeve cuffs, I did half of the rounds. For the body, I did all of the rounds that it asked for. The ribbing is a little bit different, and it's beautiful. I love it. I love the extra detail it provides. I did end up redoing the neckline once, twice, I can't remember, because it was just way too scoopy. And I kind of knew that from the beginning and looking at other finished project photos that the neckline was really open. And I just know for myself that I'm not going to wear it if it's that open. And I can still layer it, but at a certain point, if it's like super low, even if I layer it, I didn't want it to look like a bib of something that I was wearing inside. So I even contemplated picking up stitches when doing the neckline and doing like short rows to create like a crescent type of thing, or to like a faux layer inside, but I decided that was going to require way too much thought, so I didn't do that. But yeah, I did pull in the neckline a bit by picking up less stitches and using a smaller needle size. I think I did, let's see, I think I did pick up using a US 2.5, oh, 3 millimeter. A US 2.5 is 3 millimeter, which is what I did on the Rocket Tee. And now that I'm thinking of it, I remember because I finished this neckline first before the Rocket Tee. So then I based the Rocket Tee pickup stitches loosely on the Darren tee, but obviously the shape is different. This is scoop neck, this is V-neck, but it gave me also a point of reference, and something that can help you pick up stitches more evenly is I placed removable stitch markers, one at each shoulder seam, and then one in the center, and then that way I could divide up how many stitches I wanted into each section and make sure that it was symmetrical. I didn't want like one side to be having a ton more stitches than the other side. It would just end up really wonky. So, tip for you. And, oh yeah, the tee also gives you the option of a high-low hem, and I ended up omitting those short rows in the back because picking up more stitches for this scoop neckline was going to automatically pull my front like up more, right? And the back will automatically be longer. And also because I needed to make some adjustments to the to kind of like the A-line shaping in the back, I wasn't going to end up with the same number of stitches as what the short row shaping part was going to be, and I didn't want to math all that. So I just omitted that, and I'm glad I did because I think it would have just been way too much of a dip for me. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like. So you can see how it's already like a pretty big dip in the back. The back is longer than the front. And if I did more short row shaping, it would have been even bigger of a difference. So I really like it. It's so drapey. It is so comfortable. It is a great piece for the summer, and I mean, maybe even into the fall. I mean, fall has a lot of orange and yellows and stuff. Basically, I'll wear whatever I feel like wearing, and I'm really glad I took a chance to make this piece. Jacqueline does have a website with some tutorials on like some certain techniques, and I definitely learned several techniques in here. Like for the stitches that you pick up to do the sleeves, that was new to me. She had this really interesting way of picking up that made the edges very tidy. I mean, hers are definitely more tidy than mine, but I think it looks pretty good. So I don't know what the final measurements of this top are, but it ended up being a really good length. The top of my hip is here, and that's where the ribbing starts. So yeah, I'm really happy with this, and I recommend giving this pattern a try if you are a little bit adventurous and want to learn more about shaping and making a garment customizable to fit you. All right, we are on to socks. Look at these socks. I love these so much, and I knit them using, let me get to my project page here. Oh, and as you may or may not know, so I keep a notebook. It's one of those like dot journal notebooks, and I keep all of my projects in here, and I have tape flags for stuff that I finished, stuff that I'm working on. Red ones indicate testing ones, so yeah, it just helps me keep track of stuff, and it decreases my use for a screen, or relying on something that's battery operated or needs to be charged. It's just, I find it less distracting to have a notebook, pen and paper, than it is to have my phone on or a computer or things like that. Anyway, back to the socks. So these I knit with a peekaboo cuff, and I'll link to that tutorial on the screen. It'll be in one of the top corners. And it's a fold over cuff, so nothing new. I'm not inventing anything. I just wanted to share how I was using them on my socks, and just something that has brought me so much joy and that has been so much fun to knit. It is not fussy, not complicated, and you can really add it to any sock. I have not tried it on longer socks. I feel like if you are going to do it on a longer sock, you might want more, how do you say it? Like more width in the cuff, but for short socks, this works really well. So you start with your contrast color, and I won't go into all the details because it's in the other tutorial, but you start with the contrast color, then you join in your main color, then you fold it in half wrong sides together, knit that together with your cast on edge, and then keep going. So that's it. And these pair of socks are knit out of my Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad subscription, and I joined this year and I have loved every minute of it. It is so much fun getting that package in the mail every month, and you rotate through 3 different yarn bases, and the colorways are a surprise, and you have a full skein of 100 grams and a mini that's 20 grams, and it's just so much fun. I love it. I love it. And the July one, so these are from July, is Eager Verbena, and it's in her 75% 25% superwash merino nylon blend, 4-ply, 463 yards for 100 grams, and so that's this main color. It's kind of a cream with an indigo on it, and then that came with this kind of terracotta peach mini, and then this seafoam mini is from April's Sock Squad sock set, but I thought it went really well together, so I decided to use it. The heel is from Denise of Earth Tones Girls Sock Exploration Shadow Wrap Heel pattern. I just love it. I think I've used it, in 6 pairs of socks now? I can't even remember since I tested it in April. It is fast and it fits really well. Now, if you have a really high instep, it has been recommended to check out Mina of the Knitting X-Pack. She has a recipe for extending a short row heel for more space if you need it. So I haven't tried it, but a lot of people rave about it, so that's something to look for. So I don't make any modifications on that part of it. I do find this heel really easy to modify for any stitch count. So I've used it on 48 stitches, 56 stitches, 60 stitches, 64 stitches, and it's been great. So I did a few stripes, and then finished off in the main color and in my toe. And what I also love about this cuff is that my socks don't slide down. Like, I don't know if it's just having the extra fabric there. It's thicker, and so it stays up. Yeah, I haven't had any issues with it. And is this my 3rd pair of shorties I've knit with this cuff? I think so. They're a little loose on this blocker because they've actually been worn and were in the pile for washing, but I wanted to show you what they look like. Just for reference, my foot length is 9¼ inches, foot circumference 8 inches. I wear a US 7 women's shoe. And let me just look up real quick those numbers for you. All right, so I did a 60 stitch count for these socks, and main color I used 29 grams. The seafoam green I used 5 grams, and the peachy terracotta I used 10 grams. Love these socks. Okay, next pair of socks. So I mentioned earlier that we have tons of zinnias in bloom. And something cool about zinnias is that the more you cut them, the more they flower. And the kids and I have been really enjoying making bouquets, and they last a pretty long time in the vase too. We usually cut early in the morning and put them in the vases, and they last, I feel like, about a week, maybe even longer. And so we got this idea to knit a pair of socks with colors inspired by the zinnias. And I love stripy socks and playing with color and putting different colors together inspired by different things. And so my daughter and I the older one, 8-year-old, we looked through some of my colors and found beautiful colors that match the zinnia blooms so well. I'll put a picture on the screen of the bouquet of zinnias, and here I'll show you the socks. They're also a little loose on the blockers because they have been worn, but I love them so much. Aren't they beautiful? So good. This pair I used US 1.5 or 2.5 millimeter needles, and they are for our 8-year-old who has a 7-inch foot circumference, 7 3/4 inch length, and wears US 1, well, I don't know if it's US 1, Youth 1 size shoe, and I cast on 48 stitches, old Norwegian cast on. I did 3x1 ribbing for 4 inches, and then in between each color change I did a knit round, so no purling, and that prevents the other color from peeking through in the purl bump, so it's like a very tidy color transition. I don't always do that, but I thought I would do it in this one, and I really like how it turned out. So yeah, these colors are so beautiful. And I, before starting the heel, I knit 3 rounds, and I probably could have done 4 to center it a little bit better, but it doesn't really matter. And I did the shadow wrap heel, and yeah, I thought it turned out really nicely. So in the back of this heel portion, when I started, I did just knit stitches, and then on the front portion I continued with the 3x1 ribbing. And then once I finished the heel, the sole stitches have no ribbing, they're just stockinette, whereas the instep stitches on top have continue the 3x1. And then once I got to like toe time is what we call it here, so I have her try them on, and then my kids know now too, as long as it's kind of between the base of the pinky or the top of the pinky, somewhere in that range, it's toe time. So she picked out this green that reminded her of the zinnia stems, and I switched to the toe. So each color stripe has 8 rounds, and after we went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stripes after the heel portion, switched to the toe, and I knit 5 rounds with no ribbing before alternating decrease rounds with knit even rounds, decrease rounds, go down by 4 stitches. So I went down until it was 16 on top, 16 on bottom. Then I did only decrease rounds until I had 12 on top, 12 on bottom, and then I Kitchenered that together. So these socks fit her really well. What I like about ribbed socks for kids or for gift knitting in general is that you have more wiggle room. You don't have to have their circumference just right. There's quite a bit of stretch to them. And as we all know, kids have growth spurts, and it doesn't help you with the length, really, but it does give you more wiggle room as far as the width goes. And since we have 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, whenever the 8-year-old has growth spurts and outgrows her socks, the 5-year-old gets them. So that's a win-win situation, and I love that they get to be worn twice, and then once the 5-year-old outgrows them, we have others to spread the love who don't mind, worn hand knit socks. So love those socks, super fun, super bright. So I think now we will go into works in progress. Okay, so on the topic of zinnias, we are going to go to my Ocean Drive Socks Zinnia Edition. This pattern is by Megan of Pip and Pin, and it is fingering weight sock, and it uses US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needles. I went up half a needle size to US 1.5 or 2.5 millimeter needles because there are slip stitches in the pattern, and I find that when there are slip stitches in a pattern, it makes it less stretchy, and I just have a little more reassurance if I use US 1.5 needles. Plus, I tend to knit the smallest or smaller size in the pattern to have more negative ease in my socks, and if it's going to be less stretchy, then I want to kind of make up for that, I guess. So she has a pattern written to use like minis or scraps, leftover yarns or whatever. And what I really enjoy about her pattern is she has it completely written out step by step if you are new to sock knitting, but she also has like a condensed version at the end of her pattern that just gives you kind of the basics of the recipe so that you can use as many colors as you want, as few colors as you want, kind of just use the basic recipe to create what you are looking for in this pair of socks with this motif. So I love that. It also allows you to either just print out that one page or not print it out at all and just kind of know the colorwork chart. It's written out and in a chart, I believe. Oh, and it comes in 3 sizes. Finished circumference of 7 inches, 8 inches, and 9 inches. So I am knitting the size small. And let me show you what I have going on in mine. Now mine are inspired by zinnias, and here they are. So what I love is that they're called Ocean Drive because they're supposed to be like waves, but I feel like the waves look like petals too. You know, this way instead of like looking up this way. And I cast on with this vibrant hot pink, and that color is Vice, dyed by Sarah of Traveling Yarn. And then I have this orange color, which is Malabrigo sock, called Terracotta. Then I have this peachy pink, like kind of a dusty pink color, that's Reef by the Kinetic Knitter. And then this peachy orange color is a New Dawn from Farmer's Daughter Fibers January Sock Squad. This creamy color with a hint of peach is a One of a Kind from Bella Filato Studio. And yeah, that's all the colors that I'm using here. And I just absolutely love it. And I put in a heel. You can guess what it is. Shadow Wrap Heel by Denise of Earth Tones Girl. The pattern says you can sub in any sort of short row heel you want. And I think she has you use the main color in the middle of a stripe. And I decided to use the same color as the stripe that I was working on just to not break it up or have extra ends to weave in. But I think I'll do the toe in the hot pink as well, just to kind of tie it together. I am knitting them on 9-inch circulars because I find my colorwork tension most even on 9-inch circulars. Plus I just enjoy knitting with 9-inch circulars even if I'm not using colorwork. And then I don't have like intersections or break points in between the repeats where I could get laddering or forget what I'm doing. This way, if I have kind of like a pattern in my mind, like however many knit and then slip and knit and slip or whatever it is, that I can just keep it going up to the beginning of round versus having these stopping points where I have to remember where I left off, if that makes any sense. I also enjoy knitting mine 2 at a time on their own separate needles because then I am like kind of in the same mindset where I am, and then each one is playing catch up with each other, and then I finish a pair of socks kind of around the same time. So here's my second one. Aren't they so beautiful? Ah, I love them. So some of the yarns here have it divided into 2 cakes just from knitting previous socks. But I have a few that aren't like divided into 2, so then I need to work through them on one sock before I can do it on the other one. So this one's a little bit farther than this one, but since I just finished using this cream color with a hint of peach, I can join that in to this one here, and then once I get past that, then I will have finished this terracotta orange, and then I can shift this to the other sock. The ones that I have divided up are like the dusty peach and the peachy orange from previous socks that I have knit. So yeah, I love these, and hopefully I will have these finished in the next, well, I don't know if it'll be this week, but this week, next week maybe, it'll be nice to have them done. There are so many socks that I want to cast on, and there's tons of sock knit-alongs going on right now. Some are on Ravelry, a lot of them are on Instagram, just so many. And it's just fun to knit a lot of socks together with other people and to support designers that you love their patterns. And yeah, it's really fun. So after I finish these, I have more socks that I want to cast on. I won't talk about them now because I don't know exactly which ones I'm casting on next, but I do want to get these finished by the end of this week or next week, something like that. So my goal this year is to knit more socks for my husband. He wears everything that I make him, and we are generally chillier here, maybe not in the summer, but we have the opportunity to wear knits almost year-round, and I would just like to have more socks made for him. I think maybe I've done 4 or 5 pairs so far, not just this year, but I would just like to grow his collection a little bit. So I'll show you this pair. This, I think I started like early July or mid-July, and it is a simple 3x1 ribbing, so there's no cuff different from the leg. It is all just 3x1 ribbing. And the yarn that I'm using is Knit Picks Hawthorne Fingering and Mount Tabor. And that is an 80% superwash Peruvian Highland wool and 20% nylon. It is a heavier fingering weight that like almost borders sport weight, maybe. It's 357 yards for 100 grams. I'm using US 2, which is a 2.75 millimeter circular needle. And they're knitting up really nicely. I like the ribbing. He has mentioned that the socks tend to stay up better if there is ribbing versus just a vanilla sock. So I am knitting them like that for him. I did Old Norwegian cast on of 64 stitches. I am using a bigger needle size. And I do find that when I knit socks for him on a US 1.5 or US 2, depending on the yarn weight, casting on 64 stitches seems to fit really well. He has a 9.5 inch foot circumference, 10 inch length, and he wears a men's US 10 shoe size. And I do find that information helpful, especially if you are trying to figure out socks that you're knitting for someone you know. And granted, everybody's gauge is a little different, so if anything, it just gives you a little bit of a starting point. You may not knit the same as I do, and that's okay, but at least it gives you kind of a reference point as to where to start. So that's where I am with this. Not a ton to show. This is kind of like a vanilla sock project. I can take this anywhere, and I think I'm going to do 60 rounds for the cuff leg part. Probably put in a shadow wrap heel because I'm obsessed with the shadow wrap heel. And then for the foot, I'll do the ribbing on the top, stockinette on the bottom. And I think I'm just going to do these all this one color. I really like how this tonal green is working up. Let me show you what the yarn cake looks like. So it has like all these variations of green. I don't know if it's showing up a little bluer on camera or not, but yeah, I mean, maybe it's like a bluer green than a yellow green. A little bit cooler, but it's so beautiful. I just love the colors that are in here. So yeah, that is that project, and that'll just be ongoing. There's no like deadline for it or anything. These next, including this one, next 3 projects are all for him, so they'll just, you know, get done when they get done. All right, the next work in progress is, I guess I haven't been showing you any of the bags that the projects are in, but that's okay. You've seen a lot of them before because, you know, you don't use the bag once for a project. This is one that I made. It's a patchwork floral bag. I just adore it. I put a denim boxed bottom just for more sturdiness on the bottom. And it's a drawstring because A, I don't love sewing zippers. I will do it, but I don't love it. And you know, you don't get your yarn stuck in the zipper or anything, and it's kind of a built-in handle, so I love that. So this pair of socks that I am knitting for my husband, I am using yarn dyed by Woolens and Nosh, Michelle, and this self-striping sock yarn is 90% Targhee, 10% nylon, and it's a little bit like a heavy fingering. It's 411 yards for 100 grams, and it was a seconds, so it was like part of her initial trial for this color combination. And this colorway is called Summer by the Lake, which is aptly named for us because we spend much of our summer by a lake. I mean, we don't live on a lake, but we are surrounded by tons of different lakes, big, small, and there are lake beaches and playgrounds, and it's how we typically spend our summers. Since the pandemic, we don't maybe go as frequently, only because, you know, if it gets crowded, then we have to leave, and, you know, packing up the kids and all of the beach gear can be a little annoying if you get there and it's like crowded, but generally within 5 miles anywhere, we can, you know, drive to another one and kind of see how that is. And the kids have been really flexible, which is, you know, kudos to them. It's not easy, but I feel like flexibility is the name of the game here. So aren't these colors beautiful? Now I am starting them from opposite ends. So when I first wound my 100-gram skein into one big yarn cake, then I pulled from the outside and wound off 50 grams, which means the outside on one cake will now be on the inside of the other cake. And sometimes if I want to kind of like match things up in order, I'll then rewind that one that I pulled from so that both of them have the previous outside then on the inside. But because there are so many stripes in here, I didn't want to have to like waste any yarn by trying to get them to start at the same part. So I would rather them go in opposite directions, and then if things like don't quite line up or almost line up, then it doesn't really matter and it'll look great. So I love that. So one of them starts blue on the top of the cuff, and the other one starts green on the top of the cuff, and they're just so summery. I just love them. So I think I just finished the cuff on both of them. So I cast on 64 stitches. I did a 2x2 rib for 20 rounds, and then I'm just gonna do these ones stockinette. I know. He said the ribbed socks fit him better, but I don't really want to knit 2 pairs of ribbed socks at the same time. So these ones will be stockinette. I did do a nice big cuff though, so hopefully they'll stay on all right. And then we'll just knit all the way down. And I think, I don't know for the heel if I'm going to do a shadow wrap heel again, or if I want to do kind of more a slip stitch heel flap and gusset. We'll see what I feel like when I get to that point. And then I'm just going to use this yarn for the entire sock. I don't want to switch out anything. I just think I want to let the colors do their thing. It's so much fun, and there's going to be plenty to knit him an entire pair of socks. I don't know how long or short I'm going to make them yet. We'll just kind of see. And then if there's any remaining, I think they could make really cute fingerless mitts. Probably not for him because I don't, well actually I don't know. It kind of depends on how much is remaining, but there should be definitely enough for a pair of kids' mitts. So in this plaid bag, I love this bag. I sewed this one. It has a zipper. Like I said, I don't love sewing zippered bags, but I'll do it, and it's not really a big deal. And in this bag is a hat I'm knitting for my husband, and I am using the Farmer's Daughter Fibers Sock Squad yarn, except this time I'm not knitting socks. So August's yarn is the yak base. It's called the Bear Paw Sock, and it is, let me get my info here, 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, 10% nylon at 437 yards for 100 grams. This month's yarn colorway is Cool as a Cucumber. And here is the main color. It's like a beautiful sagey green. It's a very calming color. And I am not using the gray mini this time. So all the yak bases have kind of a gray undertone to it. So I don't know if this one is dyed or like the original color. I don't really know, but I'm saving this mini for a future sock project, most likely sock project. And then I am pairing this month's with the May yarn. So this teal is from May, and so is the mini, that is this coppery brown. I knit my forest fruit socks using this yarn. So these are my contrast colors, and I already used them, so I still have plenty left for future socks. And I am knitting the Held Together hat by Lindsay of Larkspur Knits, and it is a ribbed hat, and it has these contrast stripes, and you hold fingering weight double for a DK weight, and then you marl in these contrast colors for your striping. And I already passed that part, so the rest is just holding my main color double and ribbing all the way until the end. You do wear it folded up, and which I love because I think it just like gives you an extra layer of warmth over your ears. And winter wind can be so harsh on the ears that I feel like if your ears are cold, your whole body is cold. So I love the fact that this has a folded brim, and I will probably knit it a couple inches, maybe longer than what it calls for, not because my husband likes slouchy hats, because he doesn't, but because then you can just fold it up even more if you want to, and just gives you like extra warmth. Maybe not like folding it so that it's like to the crown decreases or anything, but like I just want to make sure it covers like this ear portion. So maybe if it folds up 3 or 4 inches, so we shall see. I mean, basically I'm just going to knit until maybe the main color runs out. According to her approximations, the yardage amount that I have for this, I have maybe a little bit more than what it has for the approximate yardage, but I definitely came in under the yardage for both of my contrast colors. So we'll see. I should have just the right amount of yarn for this project. This does not have a deadline either, maybe as soon as it gets cold. So ideally I'd have this done maybe in a month or two, so we'll just see. I have a progress keeper on here. It's like a raw green gemstone. I can't remember what it is. I can't remember right now, but by Maria of Woollen Forest. Her Etsy shop is Forest Charm, and I just love it. I think it kind of goes with this really well. My husband has hazel eyes, so I feel like this color is going to go really well for him. And it's just funny because the colorway name is Cool as a Cucumber, and he is not someone who gets his feathers ruffled much. So I think it's a very fitting, appropriate colorway for him. All right, is your hot beverage cold by now, or your cold beverage lukewarm? Because mine is. I'm having white pomegranate tea in here, or pomegranate white tea. I don't remember if I mentioned that earlier. And I had to add another ice cube to it. It'll be diluted, but whatever. This is the last project. I promise. I guess I just kind of had a cast on frenzy in the last several weeks. I mean, I did cast off a lot of things, and so, you know, when your queue is like a mile long and you're excited and motivated to make things, then I say run with it, right? So this is a project bag that I sewed specifically for this project. I love it. So there's an unbleached canvas box bottom, unbleached canvas like bottom part of the bag, but a denim boxed bottom. I just feel like the denim, because it's darker too, if I set it down on stuff, it's less likely to get dirty over time. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but I feel like these bags, you could probably wash them, but they probably just do better like holding its shape if you only spot clean. But I mean, I am a mom of 2 young kids, and so things will get dirty. But anyway, so this one, something fun that I did, because it's a bigger bag, I needed to make it to fit a 6-skein project. I decided to put on cotton webbing handles in addition to the drawstring. So I just sewed those in when I was sewing in the drawstring channels, and I just love how it turned out, because now I have these handles I can hold by. They also are big enough to go, you know, over my shoulder, and same with the drawstring. Like, I probably didn't need to make the drawstring this long, but what's kind of nice is I can tie it in a bow on top to make sure it doesn't open, and away we go. Not that we're going really anywhere, but, you know, if I was. Also, you don't have to carry all 6 skeins with you, right? But since I'm not going anywhere, it's kind of a way for me to just keep all the yarn in one spot for this one project. So it is also not so stiff on the sides that I can fold it over like a gigantic yarn bucket. And I mean, can we just talk about this floral fabric? I just adore it so much. If you've been watching for a while, or even just today, you may know that I love peachy pinks and purples and pinks. I mean, I love a lot of colors, but I just love these together. It just makes me so happy. And you know what, these days, you are gonna find happy where you can find it, because we need the happiness. So, speaking of happiness and joy and finding happiness where you can find it, I finally cast on a project that I have been eyeing, for at least a year. This is the Half and Half Triangles Wrap by Pearl Soho. It is a free pattern and I feel like everybody is making it. And generally I don't like fall into like trends or trendy makes or anything. Like I do test knits and so those are kind of like, before releases. But like if everybody's knitting a certain item, like I don't necessarily feel like I have to make it unless it really speaks to me. Like if it speaks to me, and even if it was like, a pattern that released 5 years ago, I'll still make it. But if it's a pattern that, released last week and it speaks to me, then I'll probably make it too. So this wrap it just felt really daunting because it uses 6 skeins of yarn. However, I've been told that you don't use the full like last ones of each color. So it's like 3 colors, 3 skeins of one color and 3 skeins of another color. But what I was really curious about was the yarn. So the pattern is written for Pearl Soho's linen quill yarn, and that is a new blend to me, a new yarn to me, and I've just been hearing a lot of really good things about it, and I was like, this could be a fun way to give it a try. And with a wrap this large, like it's 2 gigantic triangles into like a big square that you wear folded in half, but I was nervous about using superwash merino because it would be heavy and like kind of stretch out. One second. I am almost done. That's the same thing I just told my children. So there are 2 sizes to this wrap. There's a small and a large, and I feel like everything that I've seen on Instagram and just through like Ravelry project pages, most people are all making the large one. And it's basically like a big schlanket or small blanket. Schlanket meaning shawl wrap or shawl blanket, sorry. Anyway, I guess it's a wrap, so it's like a, well, I don't know how you would mishmatch wrap blanket. Wrap doesn't sound right. Anyway, so the Pearl Soho linen quill yarn, it is 50% fine Highland wool, 35% alpaca, 15% linen. 439 yards for 100 grams. And so that makes it non-superwash, and it's so light. I feel like, so it feels really dry in hand. I wouldn't say it's scratchy. I don't feel like calling things rustic is super descriptive because when I think of rustic, I usually think of like scratchy, non-superwash, really good for color work, toothier. But I just feel like, here, I'll show you. Like it actually feels pretty soft in hand. I've seen people also test it like on sensitive areas to see if you feel like it's gonna be prickly. And since this is a wrap, it's gonna be worn over my shoulders, around my neck, so obviously I don't want it to be prickly. And I feel like it feels fine. But there are so many colors to choose from, and it's like a big square and there's 2 triangles with the long part of it, down the center. And a lot of people are making kind of 2-toned ones, like maybe a red and an orange, or you'll pick a neon and a neutral, or so many different options. And I believe the retail price is $18.50 US dollars at full price, but I've also seen them go on sale for like $14, I think, and even I thought I saw a few colors on clearance at one point for like 11 something. I can't remember, but they do go on sale, and I decided to use rose granite and rosewood pink. So this is what it looks like in skein form. The rose granite is really interesting because it's kind of like a warm gray brown kind of color. I don't really know how to describe it. In different lights I feel like it shows different. I mean, it's definitely a neutral, but it shows up kind of a warm gray taupey color, and I just love that about it. And then my second color, I'll have to dig to the bottom of my bag here. It's in, still in the plastic that it was sent in, so maybe a little crinkling. Oh, look at this. It's like a brownie, pinky, I wouldn't say quite mauve because I feel like mauve goes a little more purpley, but it is such like a dusty, rosy pink, and I adore it. The linen parts, I think, are what's not picking up as much dye, or just not picking it up. I don't really know. So you'll see these little like white hairy parts sticking out of it, which gives it a little bit of a heathered look. But I am really enjoying like the feel of it in hand while I knit with it. It's not splitty. It isn't splitty. It isn't hard on my hands. And I didn't do a gauge swatch because it's a wrap, but I am looking forward to what it feels like once it is washed and blocked, which will be a while since it is a 6-skein project. So you might see this project come up several times just, you know, to see the progress on it over time. I imagine if I go through maybe 1 skein a month, then it'll be done in 6 months. I don't know. We'll see. It also depends on how many other things I end up casting on between now and then, but I have started and I adore it. You use short rows, and as many other people have done, I have made a couple modifications. So instead of wrap and turns, I'm using German short rows, and then I have added on kind of a, it's not exactly an I-cord because the technique is different, but I've also heard it like a selvage edge. Basically so that you don't get the purl bump on the side. When you get to the last 3 stitches, you slip them from the left, you bring your working yarn to the front, slip your last 3 stitches from left hand needle to the right hand needle purlwise, then just turn your work and then just start knitting. So the way the yarn wraps those 3 stitches around creates an edge that looks like an I-cord, but I don't think it's technically an I-cord. So this is knitting up really beautifully. I have Progress Keeper on here by Maria, and I just love it. I had recorded a tutorial a couple weeks back, or maybe 1 week back, I can't remember, on casting on for like a lot of stitches without having to estimate your yarn. So I did do an old Norwegian cast on. I think it just says to do a long tail cast on, but it just really bothers me if I run out of yarn, because then you have to start over, or if I have like too long of a tail, then it just feels like a waste. So this way you pull from both the center and the outside of your yarn, and you cast on like that. So you can just cast on forever, you know, until you need to stop, and then you break one of them and then continue your project. So you do have an extra end to weave in, but honestly I think it's worth it because weaving in that end will take less time than having to redo my cast on over and over again. So I'm loving this garter project. It is fun to do and meditative. I don't like to say mindless because, I mean, you still have to use your brain, but it's definitely meditative and something that I can just pick up whenever. I can knit it when I'm tired. I can knit it when I'm awake. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I don't knit it in my sleep, but maybe you could knit it in your sleep. Yeah, I'm really loving how it's working up, and it feels really nice in hand and light. Yeah, I'm already thinking of other color combinations that I want to make, and I feel like I've heard that from a lot of people, that once you start, you just kind of want to keep making them. Are you making a half and half triangles wrap? I know several people are. Allie of Nature's Cozy, she has shown hers on her podcast and Instagram a lot of times, and I love hers. I think she's using a dark green and then also the rose granite, and the two colors look so beautiful together. Caddy Jacks, they are hosting like a big knit along for this project, and they started at the beginning of the year, and I think the goal is to finish it by Rhinebeck, which is the New York Sheep and Wool Festival, in October. And then Pearl Soho, I think, has like giveaways for people who finish their project by middle of October. I will not be finishing by middle of October, and I'm not going to Rhinebeck, so this is just a fun project that I thought I would cast on, and it has been fun following the hashtag for it and just seeing what everybody is making. So yeah, I love the pattern. I think it's really enjoyable, and I think it's very beginner friendly, aside from the daunting size, but you could make the smaller one too if you wanted to. And honestly, you could probably cast on any number of stitches, but the functionality of it may not be as good if it's not as big. Like, you could probably tie it more like a handkerchief scarf, but if you really wanted to like wrap around you, I feel like the bigger size is probably a good idea. So I think that is it. All right, I think that is everything. That was a lot of chit chat, a lot of talk. If you're still here, thank you. But yeah, I feel a little frazzled lately because it's August. School for us starts in, I think, 6 weeks or something. It's after Labor Day in September. And I'm just kind of stressed out about it. Yeah, with Delta variant spiking cases, and we have children that aren't eligible to be vaccinated yet. You know, it just seems like everything's going in the wrong direction. I felt like we were hopeful for a little bit when it seemed like everybody wanted to go get the vaccine. There weren't enough, so there was high demand, and it was like winning the lottery if you got one near you. I don't know. It's worrisome. And then there's just a lot going on in the world that can be kind of stressful. So I'm not ignoring any of those things by any means, but I do feel like our brains, at least mine, needs a break sometimes, whether that means, you know, not checking my phone for a day, or being off of social media, or not watching the news for a little bit but catching up on it later. Like, I don't feel like it's appropriate to like shut it out and just be ignorant to what is going on. I do think it's really important to be informed, but at the same time, you need to protect your mental health, which affects, you know, your physical health, to be able to take care of yourself and your loved ones, and, you know, if you have children in your life, to keep going, and to see the bigger picture that includes doing what you can to like keep going, and to find your mission and what you believe in, and yeah, to keep going. So with that, I do hope that you found some inspiration in this episode. And I don't know, I was thinking about maybe not recording again till September, but seeing as how I had so much stuff that I wanted to talk about in this episode after what, like 2.5, 3 weeks, yeah, I don't know, we'll see. Either I come back end of August or it'll be September, and by then you'll know what our school situation is if I come back in September. So anyway, cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well. Take care.